The silence in courtroom 4B at the Superior Court of California was so heavy you could hear a pin drop. Everyone thought they knew how this day would end. Marcus Sterling, the billionaire CEO of Apex Global, was going to crush his plain Jane wife, Mina, and walk away with his young, weeping mistress, Jessica. But then, the projector screen flickered to life. What played next wasn't just evidence. It was a nuclear bomb that shattered reputations, drained bank accounts, and sent the other woman running out the heavy oak doors, screaming in humiliation. You think you know drama. You haven't seen revenge like this. The rain hammered relentlessly against the tall, reinforced glass windows of the San Francisco courthouse, painting the world outside in shades of grey that matched Mina Sterling's mood. Or at least, that was what everyone assumed. Inside the lobby, the atmosphere was electric, buzzing with the kind of hushed whispers that usually accompanied a celebrity funeral or a political scandal. But this was a divorce hearing. Not just any hearing. This was the dissolution of the marriage between Marcus Sterling, the ruthlessly charming CEO of Apex Global Logistics, and Mina Sterling, the woman the tabloids had unkindly dubbed the Invisible Wife. Marcus arrived first. He stepped out of a black Maybach, flanked by 2 security guards and his lead attorney, Arthur Blackwood. Blackwood was a man whose billable hours cost more than most people's annual mortgage payments. Marcus looked every inch the victor already. He wore a bespoke navy suit cut on Savile Row, his hair perfectly coiffed, a confident, almost predatory smirk playing on his lips. Hanging onto his arm, despite the impropriety of it given the location, was Jessica Thorne. Jessica was 24, a former executive assistant at Apex, and possessed the kind of stunning, manufactured beauty that stopped traffic. She was dressed in a white pencil skirt and a modest silk blouse, a calculated attempt to look innocent, to look like the victim of love rather than the wrecking ball of a 20-year marriage. She dabbed at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing the part of the supportive, persecuted partner to perfection. "Ignore the cameras, babe," Marcus murmured, loud enough for the press to hear, guiding her through the metal detectors. "It's almost over. She'll be out of our lives by lunch." Mina arrived 10 minutes later. There was no Maybach, no security detail. She stepped out of a yellow taxi, holding her own umbrella. She wore a simple charcoal dress that she had owned for 5 years, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense bun. She looked tired. The circles under her eyes were visible even from a distance. "Look at her," Jessica whispered to Marcus as they waited near the elevator, her voice dripping with mock pity. "She looks like she's already given up. It's sad, really. She just couldn't keep up with a man like you, Marcus." Marcus chuckled, checking his Rolex, a platinum Daytona that Mina had bought him for their 10th anniversary. Mina was always content with mediocrity. She doesn't have the stomach for a fight. That's why Blackwood is going to bury her. We offered her the lake house and a monthly stipend, and she refused. Now, she gets nothing. Mina folded her umbrella, shaking off the water. She didn't look at the cameras. She didn't look at the reporters shouting questions about her mental health. Rumors planted by Marcus's PR team weeks ago. She walked past her husband and his mistress without so much as a glance. Her face was a mask of stone. Her lawyer, a man named Samuel Vance, was waiting for her by the courtroom doors. Samuel wasn't a celebrity attorney. He was an old friend of Mina's late father, a man with rumpled suits and a briefcase that looked like it had survived a war. He looked out of place next to Arthur Blackwood's polished veneer. "Are you ready, Mina?" Samuel asked softly, his eyes searching hers. "Once we start this, there is no going back. He will throw everything at you. He will try to humiliate you." Mina tightened her grip on her handbag. Inside was a USB drive that felt heavier than lead. "I'm not here to negotiate anymore, Sam," Mina said, her voice surprisingly steady, devoid of the tremble that had plagued her for months. "I'm here to finish it." As they entered the courtroom, the air shifted. The judge, the Honorable Judge Harrison, was already seated, looking over a stack of documents with a frown. The gallery was packed. Marcus had ensured his supporters, mostly board members and sycophants, filled the front rows. Mina took her seat at the plaintiff's table. She poured herself a glass of water, her hand steady. Across the aisle, Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, winking at Jessica, who sat in the front row of the gallery, clutching her purse like a shield. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The hearing began with the usual procedural drones, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. Arthur Blackwood stood up first. He buttoned his jacket, buttoning up his arrogance with it. He walked toward the judge, resting a hand on the podium. "Your Honor," Blackwood began, his voice a smooth baritone that commanded attention. "We are here today because my client, Mr. Sterling, has been trapped in a loveless, abusive marriage for years. We intend to prove that Mrs. Sterling has not only been financially irresponsible, but has exhibited unstable behavior that makes her unfit to manage any significant assets. We are asking for the prenuptial agreement to be enforced strictly, and for Mrs. Sterling to be denied spousal support on the grounds of infidelity and mental cruelty." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Infidelity. They were projecting Marcus's sins onto Mina. Mina didn't flinch. She just stared at the blank projector screen mounted on the side wall. Just wait, she thought. Just wait. Infidelity? Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow, peering over his spectacles. "That is a serious claim, Mr. Blackwood. Do you have evidence to support this?" "We do, Your Honor," Blackwood said, smiling like a shark sensing blood in the water. "We have sworn affidavits from staff members at the Sterling estate, the pool boy, the head of housekeeping, and even the personal driver. They all attest to Mrs. Sterling's illicit late-night activities, while my client was working tirelessly to build his empire." Marcus looked down at the table, feigning heartbreak. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. "Call your first witness," the judge ordered. "I call Jessica Thorne to the stand," Blackwood announced. Mina's lawyer, Samuel, stiffened, but Mina placed a calming hand on his arm. "Let her speak," she whispered. "Let her dig the hole." Jessica stood up, smoothing her skirt. She walked to the witness stand with a practiced vulnerability. She took the oath, her voice trembling just the right amount. "Ms. Thorne," Blackwood began gently, "you were Mr. Sterling's executive assistant for 3 years, correct?" "Yes," Jessica said softly. "And in that time, did you have interactions with Mrs. Sterling?" "I did," Jessica sniffled. She would call the office constantly, screaming, threatening Marcus. She was paranoid. She accused everyone of sleeping with him. It was terrifying. I saw bruises on Marcus's arm once. He told me he fell, but I knew she had done it. Lies. Pure, unadulterated venom. "And regarding the nature of your relationship with Mr. Sterling?" Blackwood asked, leading the witness. "We are close now," Jessica said, looking lovingly at Marcus. "But while I worked for him, it was strictly professional. I only comforted him when he was broken by her cruelty. We only started dating after they separated. I respect the sanctity of marriage, Your Honor." "I really do." Mina felt a bubble of laughter rising in her chest, hot and acidic. Sanctity of marriage. Jessica had been wearing Mina's diamond earrings, stolen from the master bedroom, to the company Christmas party 2 years ago. "Thank you, Ms. Thorne," Blackwood said. "Your witness?" Samuel Vance stood up slowly. He didn't walk to the podium. He stood by his chair, looking at Jessica with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Ms. Thorne," Samuel said, his voice raspy. "You stated that your relationship with Mr. Sterling began after the separation date of August 1st, 2025. Is that correct?" "Yes," Jessica said firmly, her chin raised. "Absolutely. And you stated that Mrs. Sterling was abusive and paranoid?" "Everyone knew it," Jessica snapped, dropping the sweet girl act for a split second. "No further questions," Samuel said, sitting down. The courtroom murmured in confusion. Was that it? Was Samuel giving up? Even Judge Harrison looked surprised. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, "do you have any witnesses to call?" "Actually, Your Honor," Samuel said, standing up again and picking up the small remote control for the courtroom's media system. "We don't have witnesses in the traditional sense. We felt that in a case of he said, she said, it would be better to let the facts speak for themselves. We have a video exhibit we would like to enter into evidence. Exhibit A." Blackwood jumped up. "Objection! We haven't vetted this evidence. This is an ambush." "Mr. Blackwood," the judge cut in, "this is a discovery hearing regarding assets and conduct. If Mrs. Sterling has evidence pertinent to the timeline of the relationship or the allegations of abuse, I will see it." Overruled. "Proceed, Mr. Vance." Marcus shifted in his seat. For the first time, the smirk faltered. He looked at Mina. She was finally looking back at him. Her eyes were cold, dark, and utterly empty of the love she had held for him for 2 decades. Samuel pointed the remote at the screen. "Please dim the lights," Samuel requested. The bailiff hit the switch. The room plunged into semi-darkness. The projector hummed to life, casting a bright blue square on the wall. "What you are about to see," Samuel narrated, his voice hard, "is a compilation of security footage from the Sterling residence, the Apex Global private jet, and the hallways of the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan. Footage that Mr. Sterling believed was deleted." The screen flickered. The date stamp in the corner read, October 14th, 2023. 2 years ago. The scene was the living room of the Sterling mansion. The audio was crystal clear. Marcus was on the screen. He wasn't being abused. He was on the phone, pacing. "Listen to me, Arthur," the on-screen Marcus said. The courtroom froze. It was a call to his lawyer, the very man standing next to him. "I need you to hide the assets in the Cayman accounts. The Blue Sky Shell Company. Mina is getting suspicious about the late nights. If I have to divorce her, I want her to have nothing. Absolutely nothing. Transfer the $40 million from the joint account tonight." In the courtroom, Arthur Blackwood's face went pale. That was evidence of fraud and conspiracy to hide assets, a disbarable offense. But the video wasn't done. The scene cut, December 24th, 2023. Christmas Eve. Mina had been at her mother's hospital bedside that night. The video showed the master bedroom of the Sterling house. Marcus walked in, followed by Jessica Thorne. Jessica was wearing a Santa hat and very little else. "What about your wife?" The on-screen Jessica giggled, jumping onto the bed. Mina's bed. "Forget the old hag," Marcus laughed, pouring champagne. "She's at the hospital. Hopefully, her mother kicks the bucket soon so we can stop pretending to care. Once I secure the merger with Jenkins Tech, I'll kick Mina to the curb. But until then, you're my little secret, Jess." The courtroom gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. In the gallery, Jessica Thorne let out a strangled sound. On the screen, she was mocking Mina's dying mother. "Turn it off!" Marcus roared, jumping to his feet, his face turning a violent shade of crimson. "This is illegal. That's a violation of privacy." "Sit down, Mr. Sterling." Judge Harrison slammed his gavel, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Bailiff, if he moves again, restrain him." Samuel didn't turn it off. There's more, Your Honor. The scene changed again. This was darker. March 15th, 2024. The interior of a car, a dash cam view facing inward. Marcus was yelling at Mina. "You are worthless!" Marcus screamed in the video. He backhanded her across the face. The sound of the slap was sickeningly loud over the courtroom speakers. Mina in the video crumpled against the door, sobbing. "You tell anyone about the offshore accounts, and I will bury you. I will tell everyone you're insane. Who are they going to believe, the billionaire or the housewife?" The video cut to black. The lights in the courtroom buzzed back on. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then, all eyes turned to Jessica. She wasn't the smug, crying victim anymore. She was trembling, her face patchy and red. The image of her laughing about a dying woman, sleeping in the wife's bed on Christmas Eve, was burned into everyone's retinas. The private names mentioned, the Pierre Hotel, the Jenkins Tech merger, the Blue Sky Shell Company, grounded the video in undeniable reality. These were verifiable facts. Jessica stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I didn't," she stammered. She looked at Marcus, but he was staring at the table, his head in his hands, realizing his life was over. He didn't look at her. He couldn't save her. "You liar!" A woman from the back of the gallery yelled. It was one of Mina's neighbors. Jessica couldn't take it. The shame was a physical weight. She grabbed her purse, let out a high-pitched sob, and ran. She sprinted down the aisle, past the reporters who were now frantically typing on their phones, and burst out the double doors, her heels clicking frantically down the hallway. She ran out crying, just as the title promised. But the story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Mina remained seated. She took a sip of her water. She watched the doors swing shut behind the mistress. "Mr. Blackwood," Judge Harrison said, his voice icy cold, dangerously calm. "I suggest you sit down. We are going to have a very long conversation about the Blue Sky Shell Company and your involvement in asset concealment." The judge turned to Marcus. "And you, Mr. Sterling, you will look at me." Marcus slowly raised his head. The arrogance was gone. In its place was the hollow look of a man who had bet everything on a pair of deuces and lost to a royal flush. The silence that had gripped Courtroom 4B shattered instantly. The moment the double doors swung shut behind the sobbing Jessica Thorne, the room erupted into chaos. Reporters were shouting over one another. Flashes from cameras, which were strictly prohibited but ignored in the frenzy, popped like strobe lights, and the gallery of supporters Marcus had brought were now frantically whispering, many of them looking for the nearest exit to dissociate themselves from the sinking ship. Judge Harrison did not bang his gavel this time. He simply stood up. His height seemed to fill the room, his shadow casting a long, dark pall over the defense table. "Order," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a man who had the power to strip away freedom. "Complete silence. Now." The room froze. "Mr. Blackwood," the judge directed his gaze at the high-priced attorney. Arthur Blackwood was sweating. Visible beads of perspiration were gathering on his forehead, ruining the matte finish of his expensive foundation. "In my 20 years on the bench, I have seen zealous advocacy. I have seen bending of the truth, but never, never have I seen an officer of the court actively conspire to hide assets and defraud a spouse in a recorded video call. Your Honor, Blackwood stammered, his smooth baritone cracking into a falsetto squeak. "That video. Deepfakes are common. We need to verify the authenticity." "Save it for the Bar Association hearing, Arthur," Marcus hissed, suddenly turning on his own lawyer. The billionaire was in survival mode. He stood up, smoothing his suit, trying to regain the alpha dominance that had served him well in boardrooms. "Your Honor, I would like to state for the record that I was acting on the bad advice of counsel. Mr. Blackwood assured me that these accounts were estate planning tools. I had no intention of— "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," Judge Harrison roared. The vein in the judge's temple throbbed. "You do not get to throw your co-conspirator under the bus to save your own skin. The video clearly shows you giving the order. You ordered the transfer to the Blue Sky Shell Company." Mina watched this implosion with a calm that was almost terrifying. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. Samuel Vance, her lawyer, leaned over and whispered, "Checkmate in 3 moves, Mina." The judge shuffled the papers on his desk, his face grim. "Given the evidence of domestic assault presented in Exhibit A, specifically the incident on March 15th, I am issuing an immediate temporary restraining order against you, Mr. Sterling. You are to come nowhere near Mrs. Sterling. Furthermore, because of the flight risk implicated by your offshore accounts in the Caymans, I am ordering you to surrender your passport to the bailiff immediately." "My passport?" Marcus gasped. "I have a business trip to Tokyo on Monday. I have meetings with the Matsumoto Group. You can't do this." "I just did," Harrison said coldly. "Bailiff, secure the passport. And Mr. Blackwood? You are removed from this case effective immediately. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges regarding fraud, tax evasion, and perjury. I suggest you find yourself a criminal defense attorney. You're going to need one." The color drained from Marcus's face. He looked at Blackwood, who was hurriedly packing his briefcase, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't close the latch. The lawyer fled the courtroom without a backward glance, leaving the billionaire alone at the defense table. Now, the judge turned his eyes to Mina. His expression softened slightly, but only just. "Mrs. Sterling, regarding the division of assets, the prenuptial agreement Mr. Sterling was so fond of citing contains a bad faith clause. Are you familiar with it?" Mina stood up slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. It states that if either party is found to be hiding assets in excess of $50,000, the entire prenuptial agreement is voided, and the marital assets are subject to a 50-50 split, pending punitive damages." "Correct," the judge nodded. "However, given the severity of the fraud, the attempt to hide $40 million, and the documented abuse, I am inclined to go further. I am freezing all assets of Apex Global Logistics and the personal accounts of Marcus Sterling, pending a full forensic audit by a court-appointed trustee." "You can't freeze Apex," Marcus screamed, losing all composure. He slammed his fist on the table. "The company stops moving if the accounts are frozen. We have shipping lanes in the Atlantic. We have the Jenkins Tech merger signing tomorrow. You will bankrupt me." Mina turned to face him. For the first time since the hearing began, she spoke directly to him. "You bankrupt yourself, Marcus," she said. Her voice was low, but it carried to the back of the room. "You thought I was stupid. You thought because I stayed home and raised our son, who you haven't asked about once, by the way, that I didn't know how to read a balance sheet. You left your laptop open. You left your phone unlocked. You were so arrogant you didn't even think you needed a password around me. You hacked me?" Marcus snarled, his eyes wild. "I didn't hack anything," Mina replied smoothly. "I just paid attention. Something you haven't done in 15 years. The judge banged the gavel. "Court is in recess for 1 hour, while the bailiff processes the paperwork for the asset freeze. Mr. Sterling, do not leave this building. If you step 1 foot outside those doors, you will be arrested for contempt." The bailiff moved to stand behind Marcus, effectively taking him into custody without the handcuffs. As the room began to clear, Marcus slumped into his chair. The king of the world had been reduced to a prisoner in a suit. But as Mina packed her bag to leave for the recess, Marcus looked up, a spark of desperate malice returning to his eyes. He lunged, not physically, but verbally. "You think you've won?" he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "Freeze the accounts. Fine. But the Jenkins Tech merger? That's my baby. Sebastian Jenkins is my friend. He won't sign with a company in probate. The deal will die, the stock will tank, and your 50% will be worth nothing. You're burning down the house to kill the spider, Mina. You'll walk away with half of zero." Mina paused. She looked at Samuel, then back at Marcus. A small, enigmatic smile touched her lips. "We'll see about that, Marcus," she said. "Enjoy your lunch. The vending machine is down the hall." The recess took place in a small conference room adjacent to the main courtroom. Mina sat by the window, watching the rain wash the streets of San Francisco. She felt a strange lightness in her chest, the absence of a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. "You did good, kid," Samuel said, handing her a cup of lukewarm coffee. "I've never seen Arthur Blackwood run like that. He looked like a deer in headlights." "It's not over, Sam," Mina said, taking the cup. "Marcus is right about one thing. If the Jenkins Tech merger falls through, Apex stock crashes. The shareholders will panic. The board will oust Marcus. But the value will be gone." Samuel frowned, sitting opposite her. "Mina, we talked about this. Even without the merger, Apex is worth billions. Half is enough for you and Leo to live like royalty forever." "I don't want half of the wreckage, Sam," Mina said, her eyes sharpening. "I want what I built. People forget I started Apex with him. I wrote the original business plan in our garage while he was out drinking with investors. I designed the logistics algorithm they still use today. He erased my name from the history books, but I built the engine." Samuel looked at her, confused. "So, what are you saying? You want to save the merger?" "I'm saying," Mina checked her watch, "that Sebastian Jenkins is a very punctual man." At that exact moment, there was a knock on the conference room door. Samuel stood up, defensive. "Who is it?" "We are in a private council session." The door opened. It wasn't the bailiff. It wasn't a reporter. It was a tall man in his early 40s, wearing a grey suit that cost more than the entire courtroom. He had salt and pepper hair and a kind, intelligent face. It was Sebastian Jenkins, the CEO of Jenkins Tech, the man holding the key to the massive merger Marcus was banking on. "Mr. Jenkins?" Samuel dropped his coffee cup. What are you doing here? Does Marcus know you're here?" Sebastian didn't look at Samuel. He looked straight at Mina. He walked over to her and extended a hand. "Hello, Mina," he said warmly. "It's been a long time." "Hello, Sebastian," Mina replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Samuel looked between them, his mouth agape. You two know each other." Mina gestured for Sebastian to sit. "Marcus thinks Sebastian is his friend. Marcus thinks a lot of things. The truth is, Sebastian and I went to college together. Before I met Marcus. We were study partners in economics," Sebastian clarified, smiling. "Mina was the smartest person in the class. I barely passed. She graduated summa cum laude." "But the merger," Samuel stammered. "Marcus said—" "Marcus approached me for the merger 6 months ago," Sebastian explained. "He gave me the pitch. It was flashy, arrogant, and full of holes. I was going to say no. Apex under Marcus's leadership has been sloppy. High turnover, bad PR, efficiency dropping." He paused, looking at Mina with admiration. "Then I got a call from Mina," Sebastian continued. "She didn't tell me about the divorce. She told me about the data. She sent me a revised logistics model for the integration of Jenkins Tech software into Apex shipping lanes. It was brilliant. It fixed every problem Marcus's team had ignored. Mina took over the narrative. I told Sebastian that if he signed the deal with Marcus, he'd be signing with a sinking ship. I told him to wait. Wait for what? Samuel asked. For today, Mina said. The door to the conference room opened again. The bailiff stuck his head in. Recess is over. The judge is back on the bench. Mina stood up, smoothing her dress. It's time for the second act, Sam. Are you coming, Sebastian? Wouldn't miss it for the world, the tech mogul said. Back in the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy with dread. Marcus sat alone. He had loosened his tie. He looked like a man awaiting execution. When he saw Mina walk in, he glared. But when he saw Sebastian Jenkins walk in behind her, his eyes lit up with a manic hope. "Sebastian!" Marcus called out, half rising from his chair before the bailiff pushed him back down. "Thank God, you're here. Tell the judge. Tell him the merger is critical. Tell him we need to unfreeze the accounts to sign the deal." Sebastian walked past the defense table. He stopped, looked down at Marcus, and his expression was one of cool indifference. "I'm not here for you, Marcus," Sebastian said. He walked through the gate and sat in the front row, directly behind Mina. Marcus froze. His brain couldn't process the geometry of the room. His business savior was sitting on his wife's side. Judge Harrison re-entered. "Court is back in session. I have reviewed the financial motions. The asset freeze stands." "Your Honor," Marcus shouted, desperate now, "you are destroying the livelihood of thousands of employees. Mr. Jenkins is right here. Ask him. If we don't sign today, the deal dies." Mr. Sterling is correct about one thing. Samuel Vance stood up. "Mr. Jenkins is present. Perhaps, with the court's permission, we could allow him to make a statement regarding the valuation of the company." "Highly irregular," the judge muttered. "But given the stakes involving a public company..." Mr. Jenkins approached. Sebastian Jenkins stood at the podium. He didn't look nervous. He looked like a man who owned the room. "Your Honor," Sebastian began, "Mr. Sterling is under the impression that Jenkins Tech intends to merge with Apex Global under his leadership. That is incorrect." Marcus blinked. "What?" "We have a letter of intent." "We had a non-binding letter," Sebastian corrected him, not even turning to look at Marcus. "However, in light of the revelations regarding fraud and embezzlement revealed in this court today, Jenkins Tech is formally withdrawing its offer to merge with the current management of Apex." "You can't," Marcus screamed. "You're killing the company." "However," Sebastian continued, talking over Marcus, "we are prepared to present a new offer. Jenkins Tech is prepared to execute a hostile buyout of the controlling shares of Apex Global. We have the capital ready, but we have one non-negotiable condition." "And what is that?" Judge Harrison asked, intrigued. Sebastian pointed at the plaintiff's table. "We will only execute the buyout and save the company stock from collapsing if the new CEO and chairman of the board is Mina Sterling." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. "Huh? She's a housewife. She doesn't know anything about shipping." "Actually," Sebastian smiled, "she wrote the code that runs your tracking system, Marcus. You just took the credit. The board of directors at Jenkins Tech has already reviewed her proposal. It's superior to yours in every way." Mina stood up. She turned to Marcus. The look on her face wasn't triumph. It was pity. "I told you, Marcus," she said softly. "I didn't just want half. I want my company back." Judge Harrison looked at the stunned billionaire, then at the composed woman standing tall. He picked up his gavel. "It seems," the judge said, a hint of amusement in his voice, "that the market has spoken. Mr. Sterling, since your assets are frozen and you are facing criminal charges, you are hardly in a position to negotiate corporate strategy. This hearing is adjourned until tomorrow morning, at which point we will discuss the terms of the transfer of control." Bang! The gavel hit. Marcus slumped forward, his head hitting the table. He had lost his wife. He had lost his mistress. He had lost his money. And now, in the ultimate twist of irony, he had lost his company to the very woman he had called useless for 20 years. But the drama wasn't done. As the bailiff moved to handcuff Marcus for the transport to the holding cell, due to the flight risk, the courtroom doors burst open again. It wasn't Jessica returning. It was a team of men in windbreakers with 3 letters printed in yellow on the back: FBI. The arrival of the FBI turned the already chaotic courtroom into a scene from a crime thriller. The lead agent, a man with a buzz cut and a windbreaker that read Special Agent Miller, didn't look at the judge or the lawyers. He walked straight to the defense table where the bailiff was already holding Marcus. "Marcus Alexander Sterling," Agent Miller announced, his voice booming without the need for a microphone. "You are under arrest for violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1956, laundering of monetary instruments, and Section 1343, wire fraud." Marcus turned pale, his knees buckling. "Laundering? No, it was just tax avoidance. It was just a shell company in the Caymans. Everyone does it." Miller handcuffed Marcus, the metal clicking tightly against the billionaire's wrists. "You didn't just move money, Mr. Sterling. The Blue Sky account was accepting deposits from the Omni Syndicate, a sanctioned entity known for human trafficking and arms dealing. You were washing their money through your logistics shipping lanes." A collective gasp went through the room. Tax evasion was one thing, a white-collar crime that people often rolled their eyes at. But human trafficking? Arms dealing? Marcus had gone from a greedy husband to a monster in the eyes of the public in 10 seconds flat. "I didn't know!" Marcus screamed as they began to drag him away. "I didn't ask where the money came from. I just took the fees. Mina, tell them. You know I'm not a terrorist." He looked back at his wife, his eyes bulging with panic. He was begging the woman he had slapped, the woman he had planned to leave penniless, to save him. Mina didn't move. She stood next to Sebastian Jenkins, her face unreadable. She watched as the man who had once promised to protect her was dragged out of the double doors, not by high-priced lawyers, but by federal agents. Judge Harrison looked down at the empty defense table. "It appears," the judge said dryly, "that the divorce proceedings will have to be paused while Mr. Sterling awaits federal arraignment. Court adjourned." The holding cell smelled of bleach and old sweat. It was a stark contrast to the mahogany and leather of Marcus's corner office. He was sitting on a metal bench, his tie removed, his shoelaces taken. He was staring at the concrete wall, shivering. The heavy steel door buzzed and clanked open. Marcus looked up, expecting his lawyer. Instead, he saw Mina. She was still wearing her charcoal dress, but she looked different, taller, stronger. The invisible wife was gone. "You have 5 minutes," the guard said, closing the door but staying visible through the window. "Mina," Marcus breathed, scrambling to the bars. "Thank God, you have to get me bail. The accounts are frozen. You have to talk to Sebastian. Tell him to post the bond. I can fix this. I can explain everything." Mina stood a foot away from the bars, just out of his reach. She looked at him with a clinical detachment, like a scientist studying a bug under a microscope. "You can't fix this, Marcus," she said quietly. "The FBI has the server logs. I gave them the encryption key to the Blue Sky ledger this morning. Marcus froze. You gave it to them? You sent me here? You sent yourself here, Mina corrected him. I just turned on the lights. Why? Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. Why go this far? You could have just divorced me. You could have taken half. Why destroy me? Mina stepped closer. Her eyes, usually soft and brown, were hard as flint. Because you didn't just cheat on me, Marcus. You erased me. For 20 years I raised your son. I managed your home. I wrote your business plans. I nursed your parents when they were dying, while you were on business trips in Vegas. And how did you repay me? You called me a hag to a 24-year-old girl. You planned to leave me with nothing while my mother was on her deathbed. She took a breath, her voice trembling slightly, not with fear, but with suppressed rage. I would have forgiven the affair, Marcus. Maybe, if you had come to me and been honest. But the cruelty, the calculated malice, you wanted to break me. You wanted to leave me destitute just for the sport of it. So, I decided to show you what it feels like to be powerless. What about Leo? Marcus pleaded, playing the father card. Think of our son. His father is going to prison. Leo is 19, Marcus. He's a sophomore at Stanford. I called him an hour ago. Is he okay? Is he worried about me? Mina shook her head. He asked if he could change his last name to my maiden name. He saw the news about the trafficking money. He doesn't want to be a Sterling anymore. That was the final blow. Marcus slumped against the bars, sliding down to the dirty floor. He wept, not the fake tears he had shed in the courtroom, but ugly, guttural sobs of a man who realized he was truly, utterly alone. Goodbye, Marcus, Mina said. She turned and walked to the door. Mina, he screamed after her. Mina, please, don't leave me in here. The heavy steel door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in his soul. While Marcus was rotting in a federal holding cell, Jessica Thorne was discovering that the life of a mistress is very expensive when the benefactor disappears. She had run from the courthouse in a blind panic, hailing a cab to the penthouse apartment Marcus rented for her in the Marina district. It was a stunning apartment with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. She needed to grab her jewelry, her designer bags, and the cash Marcus kept in the safe. She would flee to Cabo until this blew over. She arrived at the building and rushed to the elevator. She pressed the button for the penthouse. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, harder. The light didn't turn on. Excuse me, miss. Jessica turned. The building concierge, a man named Mr. Henderson, who usually greeted her with a smile and a bow, was standing there with a clipboard. His face was stern. The fob for the penthouse has been deactivated, Henderson said. What? That's ridiculous, Jessica snapped, trying to channel the entitlement she had learned from Marcus. I live there. Mr. Sterling pays the lease. The lease was held by Apex Global Logistics, Henderson informed her. We received a call from the new acting CEO about 30 minutes ago. The company has terminated the corporate housing agreement, effective immediately. The locks have been changed. New CEO. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. Yes. A Mrs. Mina Sterling. She was quite specific. She said that non-employees are not permitted in company housing. Jessica's knees felt weak. Her clothes, her passport, her cash, everything was in that apartment. But my things. Mrs. Sterling said that your personal effects have been boxed up and left on the curb outside the service entrance, Henderson said, gesturing to the back door. I suggest you collect them before it starts raining harder. Jessica ran out the service entrance. There, in the alleyway, next to the dumpsters, were 3 cardboard boxes. They were wet. She ripped them open. Her clothes were there, thrown in haphazardly. But the safe? The cash? Gone. She frantically dug through her purse. She still had the diamond tennis bracelet Marcus had given her for her birthday last week. He had told her it was worth $50,000. I can sell this, she thought. I can get enough for a plane ticket and a hotel. She hailed another cab, using the last $20 in her wallet, and went to a pawn shop on Mission Street. I need to sell this, she told the pawnbroker, slamming the bracelet on the counter. It's a Harry Winston, worth 50 grand, I'll take 20. The pawnbroker, a grizzled man with a loop in his eye, picked up the bracelet. He studied it for exactly 5 seconds. Then he laughed. Lady, this isn't Harry Winston, it's Harry Wilson. What? It's a knockoff, the man said, tossing it back to her. High-grade cubic zirconia set in silver-plated alloy. Nice shine, but it's costume jewelry. I've seen better stuff at the mall. I'll give you $50 for the metal weight. No, Jessica whispered. He said... He swore. Rich guys lie, the pawnbroker shrugged, especially to girls like you. Jessica stared at the fake diamonds. Marcus hadn't even loved her enough to buy her the real thing. She was just a cheap accessory to him, just like this bracelet. She walked out of the pawn shop into the pouring rain, clutching a box of wet clothes and a fake bracelet, with nowhere to go and no one to call. The rain had cleared, leaving the San Francisco sky a brilliant, piercing blue. The glass skyscraper of Apex Global gleamed in the sunlight. A black town car pulled up to the front entrance. The doorman, confused, stepped forward. He was expecting the usual stream of panicked executives. Instead, Mina Sterling stepped out. She wore a cream-colored power suit, tailored to perfection. Her hair was down, blowing in the breeze. She looked radiant. Sebastian Jenkins stepped out of the other side of the car, acting as her escort. They walked through the lobby. The silence was immediate. Employees stopped talking. Phones were lowered. All eyes were on the woman who had just taken down the tyrant. Mina walked straight to the elevator bank. She didn't need a key card. Sebastian swiped his override pass. They rode to the top floor, the C-suite. When the elevator doors opened, the executive assistants jumped up. "Mrs. Sterling," one of them gasped. We didn't know you were coming in so soon." "I have a company to run," Mina said pleasantly. "Please call an all-hands meeting for the senior staff in the boardroom in 10 minutes. She walked down the hallway, past the portraits of Marcus that lined the walls. "Have maintenance take those down," she said to Sebastian, gesturing to the photos. "I want art up there. Maybe some landscapes, something peaceful." She reached the CEO's office, Marcus's office. The door was open. Inside, Arthur Blackwood, Marcus's former lawyer, was frantically shredding documents. Mina cleared her throat. Blackwood jumped, dropping a stack of files. "Mina, I was just preserving client privilege." "You're trespassing, Arthur," Mina said, walking over to the desk. She ran her hand along the mahogany surface. "And you're destroying evidence. The FBI is downstairs seizing the servers, but I imagine they'd be very interested in what's in that shredder." Blackwood turned white. "Get out," Mina said softly. "Security is waiting for you at the elevator." Blackwood grabbed his briefcase and ran. Mina walked behind the massive desk. She sat down in the leather chair. It was too big for her, adjusted for Marcus's ego. She reached under the seat and pulled the lever, lowering it, adjusting it until her feet were firmly planted on the floor. She spun the chair around to look out the window at the city below. The bay was sparkling. The ships in the harbor, Apex ships, were moving. Sebastian stood in the doorway, smiling. "How does it feel?" Mina took a deep breath. It didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like justice. It felt like coming home to a house she had built, but was only now allowed to live in. "It feels," Mina said, picking up a pen, "like there is a lot of work to do." She pressed the intercom button on the desk. "This is Mina Sterling," she said, her voice projecting into every office in the building. "The Jenkins Tech merger is officially signed. We are implementing a new payroll structure today. No more bonuses for the executives until the warehouse staff gets a 15% raise. Let's get to work." 6 months later, the rain had returned to San Francisco, but inside the federal courthouse, the air was dry and stale. This time, the courtroom was packed for a different reason. It wasn't a divorce hearing. It was a sentencing. Marcus Sterling stood before Judge Harrison. The bespoke suits were gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit that washed out his complexion. He had lost 30 pounds. His hair was thinning. He looked like a ghost of the titan he used to be. "Marcus Alexander Sterling," Judge Harrison read from the file, his voice echoing with finality. "You have pleaded guilty to wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The damage you have done to the reputation of legitimate commerce is severe. But the damage you intended to inflict on your family was, in this court's opinion, a window into your character." Mina sat in the back row. She wasn't there to gloat. She was there to witness the closing of a chapter. "I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison to be served immediately," the judge declared. "Additionally, restitution of $40 million is ordered." The gavel banged. As the marshals led Marcus away, he turned his head. He scanned the room, his eyes locking onto Mina. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to beg, perhaps to apologize. But no words came out. The steel doors swallowed him whole. Mina didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply stood up, adjusted her coat, and walked out into the hallway. "Are you okay?" Sebastian Jenkins was waiting for her, holding 2 umbrellas. "I am," Mina said, taking one. "I finally am." They walked out of the courthouse and down the street. They decided to stop for coffee at a small cafe near the financial district. The line was long, filled with office workers rushing back to their desks. When they reached the counter, the barista kept her head down, frantically wiping a spill. "I'm so sorry, I'll be right with you," the barista mumbled, her voice cracking with stress. "My manager is watching me." She looked up. It was Jessica. The glamour was gone. No designer makeup, no silk blouses. She wore a stained green apron, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exhausted, aged by the harsh reality of minimum wage and social pariah status. Jessica froze when she saw Mina. Her hand shook, rattling the espresso cup she was holding. "Mina," she whispered. Mina looked at her. She could have demanded she be fired. She could have made a scene. But she realized that Jessica was already in her own prison. "Just a black coffee, please," Mina said politely. "And a latte for him." Jessica nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Tears of shame this time, not manipulation. She made the drinks in silence. When she handed them over, she didn't touch Mina's hand. "Keep the change," Mina said, dropping a $20 bill into the tip jar. They walked out. Sebastian looked at Mina with a smile. "You're a better person than I am. I would have ordered a milkshake just to make her use the blender." Mina laughed, a genuine, bright sound. "She's irrelevant, Sebastian. I don't look back. I only look forward." That evening, Apex Global hosted its annual charity gala. The ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel was glittering with lights. Under Mina's leadership, the stock price had tripled. The Jenkins Tech integration had revolutionized the shipping industry. Mina stood on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. She held a glass of champagne. Sebastian stepped up beside her. He placed a warm hand on her shoulder. It wasn't a possessive touch like Marcus's. It was a supportive one. "To the new queen of logistics," Sebastian toasted, clinking his glass against hers. "To partners," Mina corrected him softly, turning to look him in the eye. "Partners," Sebastian agreed, his gaze lingering on her lips. "And maybe something more?" Mina smiled, the wind catching her hair. For the first time in 20 years, she wasn't the invisible wife. She was the CEO, the survivor, and the architect of her own destiny. "Ask me again after the quarterly report," she teased. But as she looked at him, and then out at the vast, open sky, she knew the answer was already yes. And that is how the tables turned. Marcus thought he held all the cards. He thought money and intimidation could silence the woman who built his life. But he forgot the most important rule of all. You never truly know someone until you try to destroy them. Mina didn't just survive, she thrived. She took the bricks he threw at her and built a castle he could only dream of entering. It's a reminder to all of us that dignity, intelligence, and patience are the most powerful weapons you can wield. The truth always has a way of playing out on the big screen, eventually. Wow, what a ride. I hope you enjoyed this story of ultimate revenge and justice. If seeing Marcus and Jessica get exactly what they deserved gave you some satisfaction, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And I want to know what you would have done. Would you have tipped Jessica at the coffee shop like Mina did, or would you have ignored her? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.